Tanzania election violence echoes dark days of Zanzibar riots. The violent protests that erupted across Tanzania during this week's general elections have awakened painful memories of the country's darkest political moment, the Zanzibar riots of 2000 to 2001 that left at least 35 people dead. A nation in turmoil. As polls opened on Wednesday, October 29, 2025, Tanzania's major cities, Dar es Salaam, Arusha, and Dodoma, descended into chaos. Demonstrators stormed polling stations, destroying ballots and creating scenes of widespread disorder that paralyzed the nation. By Thursday, the situation had become so volatile that the government ordered civil servants and students to stay home, while police imposed an overnight curfew in Dar es Salaam, a city of more than 7 million people. The unrest exposed a side of Tanzanians seldom seen, a population typically known for its calmness erupting in fury. Public transport buses were set ablaze, government installations destroyed, and major roads leading to airports shut down. Internet access was disrupted nationwide, and the military was deployed to the streets. The ghosts of 2000. For older Tanzanians, the scenes were hauntingly familiar. The current crisis mirrors the violent demonstrations that followed the disputed 2000 elections, when supporters of the opposition Civic United Front, CUF, took to the streets in weeks of rage against the ruling Chama cha Mapinduzi, CCM, party. The 2000 to 2001 unrest was rooted in historical injustices dating back to 1995, when Tanzania held its first multi-party elections. Those polls were marred by allegations of systematic vote rigging favoring CCM, with complaints of irregularities in voter registration, delays in delivering voting materials, and interference by police and army personnel in vote counting. CCM incumbent Salmin Amu was declared president of Zanzibar by a margin of less than 1%. In protest, CUF members boycotted the CCM-dominated Zanzibar government for 3 years. Their presidential candidate and party secretary-general, Seif Sharif Hamad, refused to recognize Amu as the legitimate president. The government responded with orchestrated reprisals against CUF members. In September 2000, police fired live ammunition into a peaceful meeting at Kilimahewa on Zanzibar Island, severely injuring 6 people. The violence escalated in January 2001, with violent demonstrations breaking out that led to dozens of deaths. Police looted CUF-owned businesses in Zanzibar town and denied the party permission to hold political rallies. Many legitimate residents were barred from registering to vote, with local authorities using a rule requiring 5 years residence in a constituency to disqualify Zanzibaris. Despite widespread international criticism, many protesters were detained until after the next national elections. No international observers were allowed to monitor voter registration or campaigning. Seif Sharif Hamad, who remained a symbol of opposition resistance, died on February 17, 2021. History repeating itself. This week's violence stems from strikingly similar circumstances. President Samia Suluhu Hassan's 2 biggest challengers were excluded from the race, infuriating citizens and sparking allegations of a sham election. The main opposition party Chadema was disqualified in April after refusing to sign a code of conduct, and its leader Tundu Lissu was charged with treason and faces a potential death penalty. The candidate for opposition party ACT Wazalendo was also disqualified, leaving only minor parties to challenge Hassan. The parallels extend beyond electoral manipulation. Rights groups have condemned a wave of terror in the run-up to the vote, including enforced disappearances, torture, and extrajudicial killings of opposition figures and activists. High-profile abductions of government critics increased dramatically in the days before the election, including the detention of popular social media influencer Nifa, who was accused of promoting protests. A grim toll. While exact casualty figures remain disputed and unverified, human rights activist Tito Magoti reported receiving information about at least 5 deaths in Wednesday's protests. A diplomatic source suggested at least 10 people had been killed in Dar es Salaam alone. Most dramatically, Chadema's spokesperson claimed the opposition party had tallied around 700 deaths during hospital visits across the country, though this figure could not be independently verified. Dozens of protesters who defied the curfew on Thursday were met with tear gas and gunfire as they returned to the streets in the Mbagala, Gongo la Mboto, and Kiluve neighborhoods of Dar es Salaam. A democracy in decline. The crisis represents a stunning reversal of fortune for Tanzania. When Hossan was sworn in 4 years ago following the death of her iron-fisted predecessor John Magufuli, she initially won plaudits for easing repression of political opponents and lifting censorship. She was the country's first female president, and Democratic campaigners had hoped she would usher in a new era of political freedom. Those hopes have been thoroughly dashed. In recent years, the United Nations has documented a pattern of escalating attacks against opposition members, activists, and journalists. Critics say Hossan has done nothing to remove the operatives Magufuli installed in the intelligence services, who remain laser-focused on any sign of internal dissent. An analyst in Dar es Salaam, speaking anonymously for fear of reprisals, captured the despair. "We thought Magufuli was a blip and the 2020 elections were an abnormality. My worry is that this is the new normal. A calm Zanzibar, for now." Ironically, while mainland Tanzania banned, Zanzibar, the epicenter of the 2000 to 2001 violence, remained largely calm during this week's elections. The semi-autonomous archipelago, which has historically enjoyed greater political freedom, saw incumbent President Hussein Mwinyi win 78.8% of votes, though the opposition alleged massive fraud and vowed to announce next steps. The relative tranquility in Zanzibar only heightened the tragedy unfolding on the mainland, where the CCM party, which has dominated national politics since its founding in 1977 and whose predecessor led the independence struggle in the 1950s, appeared determined to crush all opposition. An uncertain future. As state television began broadcasting provisional results showing Hossan winning commanding majorities in various constituencies, the government maintained complete silence about the unrest. Heavily controlled local media made no mention of the violence. Schools and colleges were ordered to remain closed, and checkpoints were set up around major cities. Protesters, meanwhile, used apps like Zello, which allows smartphones to function like walkie-talkies, to discuss plans for further demonstrations, including marches on government buildings. Tanzania, a country of approximately 68 million people with a relatively healthy economy that grew by 5.5% last year, had been considered politically stable. Protests are rare in part due to strong performance in agriculture, tourism, and mining sectors. But the exclusion of meaningful opposition candidates appears to have crossed a red line for many citizens, particularly young people who chanted, "We want our country back," as they marched through the streets. As the nation awaits official election results expected within 3 days of the vote, the specter of the Zanzibar riots hangs heavy over Tanzania. The question now is whether the country will descend into prolonged violence reminiscent of 2000 to 2001, or whether cooler heads will prevail. With the death toll potentially climbing and no sign of dialogue between the government and opposition, the outlook remains ominously uncertain. For now, Tanzania stands at a dangerous crossroads, haunted by the ghosts of its past and fearful of its future.